Have you ever been judged unfairly, accused falsely, or felt misunderstood by everyone around you? Imagine being attacked for something you didn't do, yet finding protection you couldn't explain. Today, I'm going to show you how sincerity and faith can become your shield, just like Maryam experienced. This is not just a story from the past. It is a principle that can protect and defend you in your life right now. Stay with me, because what you hear in the next few minutes could change the way you face every trial, accusation, and challenge forever. Have you ever been judged unfairly, accused falsely, or misunderstood despite your innocence? I want you to listen closely today, because there is a principle in the spiritual realm that most people do not understand. Sincerity and faith protect the innocent. The story of Maryam is not just history, it is a revelation for anyone walking with God. Maryam was young, pure, and devoted, yet she faced accusations that could have destroyed her reputation, her peace, and her very life in the eyes of her society. But notice this, she did not panic. She did not resort to defending herself with anger, clever arguments, or human manipulation. Her faith in God became her shield. Her sincerity of heart became her defense. And in that moment, the one who sees what humans cannot see intervened. Understand this. God's protection is activated by sincerity. The moment your heart aligns with truth, honesty, and unwavering faith, you invite a defense that no human reasoning can overturn. Maryam's example teaches us that divine protection is not about avoiding trials. It is about standing firm in truth and letting God vindicate you. When the world shouts lies against you, faith whispers, "Oh, I am seen, I am known, I am covered." I want you to see something crucial, innocence protected by God is not passive. It requires courage, patience, and unwavering trust. It requires that you refuse to allow fear or human judgment to dictate your response. The same way Maryam remained steadfast, the innocent today are protected when they remain sincere in their hearts and faithful in their walk. So, when lies are spoken, when false accusations come, when the world seems ready to condemn you, do not fight in anger. Fight with faith, sincerity, and prayer. God's defense is real. His vindication is powerful. And just like Maryam, you will see that what was meant to harm you becomes the very evidence of God's glory in your life. I want you to hold this principle close. Sincerity and faith are not just virtues, they are supernatural shields. If you remain genuine and steadfast, the innocent cannot be destroyed. They are covered, protected, and elevated, not by human strength, but by the power of God who sees the heart. Let this truth resonate in your soul. Stay sincere. Keep your faith and watch God defend what is yours, just as he defended Maryam. There is no accusation too great, no falsehood too strong, and no societal pressure too heavy that can stand against the protection of God when your heart is right. Sincerity is one of those qualities that the human eye often overlooks. Yet in the spiritual realm, it is among the most powerful forces. When we speak of sincerity, we are speaking about a heart that is untainted by ulterior motives, a heart that seeks to honor God above pleasing people, and a heart that is aligned with truth, no matter the cost. The story of Maryam exemplifies this in a profound way. She was a woman of complete devotion, living a life that was centered on God and untouched by worldly manipulation or deceit. Her innocence was not merely a matter of circumstance. It was the product of a heart that was sincere, transparent, and wholly committed to God's commands. This is crucial because sincerity is not passive. It is active. It is not a label to put on, but a posture of the soul that consistently chooses integrity over convenience, truth over compromise, and righteousness over human approval. When Maryam faced accusations, her innocence was put to the ultimate test. In that moment, it would have been natural to defend herself through human reasoning, to try to convince others with words, evidence, or persuasion, but she did not rely on such methods. Instead, her sincerity became the framework through which God could act. The spiritual principle at work here is that sincerity aligns the heart with divine perspective. When you are sincere, your heart resonates with God's truth. And this resonance acts as a spiritual shield, attracting divine intervention even in situations where human support is absent. Sincerity creates an environment where God's protection can manifest because it signals to the spiritual realm that the heart is pure, the intentions are right, and no hidden agendas are at play. It is almost as if the purity of the soul sends a signal that draws God's attention and invites his action. Consider this. The world often confuses innocence with weakness. People think that the innocent are defenseless, that those who remain true in their convictions must eventually succumb to slander, manipulation, or attack. But Maryam's story shows us that innocence fortified by sincerity is never defenseless. It is active and potent because it triggers divine justice. Sincerity is like a key that unlocks God's protection. Without it, even the most prayerful and faithful individual can find themselves vulnerable to deception, misunderstanding, or spiritual attack. With it, the impossible becomes possible. Accusations fall flat, judgments are overturned, and the innocent are not only defended, but also elevated in ways that surpass human comprehension. Sincerity also has a relational impact. It influences how others perceive and interact with us, even unconsciously. When a person consistently acts with honesty and purity of intention, their demeanor communicates integrity. People may initially challenge or doubt them, as was the case with Maryam, but sincerity has a way of exposing the truth over time. It cultivates trust, commands respect, and establishes credibility, not because the person fights for it, but because sincerity itself is inherently persuasive to both the human heart and the divine realm. It is this dual effect that makes sincerity indispensable. It protects the individual both spiritually and socially. Finally, sincerity is not just relevant for extraordinary events or miracles. It is a principle for daily living. Every decision, action, and word that comes from a sincere heart contributes to a life protected from corruption, manipulation, and falsehood. It establishes a foundation that allows faith to operate unhindered. When your heart is sincere, faith can function fully as a shield, knowing that it is not compromised by hidden agendas, fear, or deceit. Maryam's experience demonstrates that innocence without sincerity may be exposed to risk, but innocence grounded in sincerity becomes untouchable, defended by God Himself, and ultimately vindicated. In summary, sincerity is more than a moral trait. It is a spiritual force. It is the active quality of a heart aligned with truth, and it serves as the foundation for divine protection. Through Maryam's life, we learn that when sincerity governs our intentions and actions, it creates an invisible shield that preserves innocence, invites God's intervention, and ensures that the truth will prevail even against overwhelming opposition. Sincerity is the key that connects faith with protection, and it is the cornerstone of a life that cannot be shaken by falsehood or accusation. Faith is one of the most powerful yet often underestimated forces in the life of a believer. It is not simply belief in God as a concept or occasional acknowledgement of His existence. Faith is an active, living trust that positions the heart to receive God's protection, guidance, and intervention. The story of Maryam presents a profound illustration of this principle. When she was faced with accusations that could have destroyed her reputation and caused immense societal shame, it was not her own reasoning, her eloquence, or her social standing that defended her. It was her unwavering faith in God. Faith acted as a shield, a spiritual armor that could not be penetrated by lies, slander, or human judgment. Faith as a shield works because it anchors the soul in divine reality rather than the opinions or perceptions of people. When accusations arose against Maryam, she could have been overwhelmed by fear, doubt, or self-condemnation, but her faith ensured that her perspective remained aligned with God's. She trusted that God, who sees all things, knows all hearts, and controls all outcomes, would not abandon her. This kind of faith is proactive. It does not wait for circumstances to change, but positions the believer in the certainty that God's protection is already in place. It is a shield that absorbs attacks from every direction, including societal judgment, gossip, and malicious intent, without crumbling under pressure. Faith as a shield also transforms how one responds to adversity. When Maryam was accused, she did not respond in panic or desperation. She did not attempt to justify herself through human means. Instead, her faith enabled her to stand firm, calm, and trusting in God's justice. This demonstrates an essential truth. Faith does not always remove the attack, but it prevents the attack from harming the soul. Like a shield, it may not stop the arrows from coming, but it deflects them and protects the one who trusts in God. Faith strengthens the inner man, creating a layer of divine security that human words or actions cannot penetrate. Another critical aspect of faith as a shield is that it activates God's intervention. There is a principle in the spiritual realm. When a heart trusts fully in God, protection is released. Faith aligns the believer with divine purposes and opens the door for God's immediate involvement. Maryam's vindication was not a result of clever arguments or social allies. It was the result of her faith in a God who honors the pure and innocent. When the heart believes in God's protection, it triggers an unseen defense system that human eyes cannot see. Faith becomes both the cause and the conduit of divine defense. Faith also has a sustaining power. Trials, accusations, and slander often seek to shake the confidence of the innocent. They aim to create doubt, fear, and despair. But faith as a shield ensures that the heart remains unshaken. It maintains hope when circumstances seem hopeless and peace when chaos surrounds. In Maryam's case, faith was not passive. It was active trust that refused to yield to human pressure or societal judgment. The shield of faith does not merely protect, it empowers the believer to endure, persevere, and remain steadfast until God's timing reveals the truth. Finally, faith as a shield teaches an important lesson for our daily lives. It is not only for extraordinary situations or miraculous vindications. Every day, faith protects the believer from spiritual deception, negative influence, and moral compromise. It guards our decisions, shapes our responses, and ensures that we do not rely solely on our understanding or human validation. Faith keeps us aligned with God's perspective, providing security in a world that often seeks to manipulate, accuse, or deceive. In essence, faith is more than belief. It is spiritual armor. It shields the innocent, preserves integrity, and invites God's direct intervention. The life of Maryam exemplifies this truth vividly. Her unwavering trust in God became her defense, ensuring that she was protected even when human eyes could not see her innocence. Faith does not make life free from trials, but it guarantees that the one who trusts in God will not be overcome by them. It is a shield for the soul, a protector of innocence, and a conduit for divine vindication. Faith, when fully embraced, is the invisible hand of God guarding the heart and ensuring that truth and righteousness are preserved. Maryam's life presents one of the most profound lessons on divine protection and vindication. Her story is not simply a historical account. It is a timeless example of how innocence, when anchored in faith and sincerity, is defended against falsehood and societal scrutiny. Imagine for a moment the scenario she faced: a young woman chosen for a sacred purpose, suddenly confronted by accusations that could have destroyed her reputation, her peace, and even her future. The world around her did not see the truth of her heart. Instead, it saw what appeared to be a contradiction to their expectations, a deviation from societal norms. This is often the way the innocent are treated. They are judged by human standards, by appearances, and by superficial assumptions, rather than by the truth of their character. Maryam's trial was not a minor challenge. It was a severe test that would have shaken anyone who relied on human validation rather than divine assurance. She was confronted by disbelief and suspicion, faced with questions that implied guilt, and surrounded by those ready to condemn. Yet, in the midst of these circumstances, she did not despair. Her response was not defensive in a worldly sense. She did not attempt to argue with logic that could sway human judgment. She did not seek the support of influential people to clear her name. Instead, she remained calm, steadfast, and anchored in her faith. Her innocence was protected by a combination of spiritual integrity and unwavering trust in God, which allowed her to stand firm even when the world misinterpreted her situation. This moment teaches a critical principle. Trials often reveal the true nature of a person. For Maryam, the accusations she faced became a test not of her ability to defend herself, but of her ability to remain faithful to God's truth. Her vindication did not come from the approval of society, but from the intervention of the one who sees the hidden realities of the heart. God's defense of Maryam was immediate, undeniable, and powerful. The divine intervention that vindicated her showed that when a person is innocent and their heart is pure, God himself becomes the advocate, the witness, and the protector. Human opinion can condemn, but divine truth always prevails. It is important to note that Maryam's vindication was public and undeniable. The miracle of her defense ensured that those who doubted her were confronted with evidence of divine truth. This teaches us that innocence, when paired with faith, does not just survive attacks, it triumphs over them. Vindication may not always come in the way we expect, but when God's hand is involved, the defense is perfect, complete, and unmistakable. It becomes a testimony, not only for the one being protected, but also for others who witness it, reinforcing the reality that God upholds the righteous and the innocent in ways that human reasoning cannot replicate. Maryam's experience also highlights the importance of patience in the midst of trial. Vindication rarely comes instantly in human perception. There may be moments of doubt, isolation, or even despair, but faith allows the individual to endure, knowing that God's timing is perfect. The innocent are not abandoned. They are protected, even if the defense is not immediately visible. Maryam's calm and resolute faith ensured that she was ready for God's intervention when it came. Her trial became the platform for God's glory to be revealed, showing that adversity, when met with faith and integrity, can transform into a demonstration of divine protection. Finally, the lesson of Maryam's trial and vindication extends to our lives today. We may face situations where lies are spoken against us, our intentions are misunderstood, or our actions are misrepresented. The natural response might be fear or self-defense, but the spiritual principle remains. The innocent who rely on God's truth and remain steadfast in faith will always be vindicated. Trials are not just challenges. They are opportunities for God's power and protection to manifest in ways that human reasoning cannot achieve. In conclusion, Maryam's trial and vindication teach us that innocence, when rooted in sincerity and faith, is never left defenseless. Human judgment may waver, but divine protection is unwavering. Trials reveal the strength of faith, and vindication demonstrates the perfect. sovereign justice of God. The story of Maryam is a timeless reminder that those who are innocent and faithful are ultimately upheld and exalted by God, regardless of the accusations or pressures that surround them. Divine intervention is one of the most awe-inspiring aspects of faith, and it is central to understanding how innocence is protected in the spiritual realm. When Maryam faced accusations and societal scrutiny, it was not merely human judgment that threatened her. She was standing against a world ready to condemn her without knowing the truth. Yet, what most people fail to realize is that when a person's heart is pure, when sincerity and faith are present, God himself steps in as a defender. This is the principle of divine intervention. It is God's active involvement on behalf of the innocent, ensuring that truth triumphs where human reasoning often fails. Maryam's story demonstrates this principle vividly. She was accused of actions that, by human standards, seemed condemnable, but her heart was untouched by guilt. She did not have to rely on arguments, evidence, or social influence to protect herself. Instead, her life became a stage for God's intervention. In that critical moment, the one who sees all things, the one whose knowledge is complete, acted on her behalf. Divine intervention is not bound by human limitations. It is immediate, precise, and perfectly just. When Maryam's innocence was questioned, God's defense was not only a shield, but also a public vindication, revealing truth to those who had judged her unjustly. This teaches us that divine protection operates on a level far beyond what human effort or understanding can achieve. One of the most remarkable aspects of divine intervention is that it does not require the innocent to prove themselves. Human defense often relies on persuasion, logic, or social standing. But divine intervention bypasses all of that. The shield of God operates because the individual's heart is sincere and aligned with his will. In Maryam's case, her trusting God and her unwavering faith made her a candidate for supernatural protection. She did not need to fight for herself because her faith had already positioned her in the realm of God's favor. This demonstrates an essential spiritual principle. Divine protection is always activated by purity of heart and trust in God, not by human effort or cunning. Divine intervention also serves a dual purpose. It protects the innocent from harm, and it reveals God's glory to those who witness it. When Maryam was defended, the truth was revealed in such a way that her accusers could not deny the presence of God's hand. The intervention was not silent or hidden. It was demonstrative, unmistakable, and transformative. This teaches us that God's protection is not merely about survival. It is about vindication, honor, and the public acknowledgement of righteousness. Those who are faithful and sincere may face trials, but divine intervention ensures that the innocent are not only preserved, but also exalted. Another vital aspect of divine intervention is its timing. God's protection may not always align with human expectations. There may be moments of waiting, testing, or apparent delay. But divine timing is perfect. The shield of God may seem invisible, Yet it is always in place, guarding, sustaining, and preparing for the perfect moment of revelation. Maryam's experience shows that patience and trust are crucial. The heart that relies on God is never left defenseless, even when human eyes cannot see the defense. Divine intervention is deliberate, strategic, and always aligned with the ultimate purpose of glorifying God while preserving the innocent. Finally, divine intervention is not limited to extraordinary historical events. It operates in everyday life for those who maintain sincerity and faith. Every act of faith, every sincere prayer, and every moment of trust creates conditions for God's protection to manifest. Whether in relationships, in the workplace, or in societal challenges, the principle remains the same. Innocence fortified by faith invites divine intervention. The spiritual realm responds to purity, sincerity, and trust, and God's defense becomes visible in both subtle and dramatic ways. In essence, divine intervention is the supernatural manifestation of God's justice and protection. Maryam's life illustrates that when innocence meets faith and sincerity, the invisible hand of God moves to shield, defend, and vindicate. Human judgment may fail, lies may abound, and society may misinterpret, but divine protection is unfailing, perfectly timed, and powerfully effective. Those who are sincere and faithful are never abandoned. They are covered, guarded, and elevated by a God whose intervention surpasses all human understanding. One of the greatest lessons from the story of Maryam is the contrast between human reaction and divine justice. Human beings are naturally limited in understanding. They rely on appearances, assumptions, and personal biases when judging others. They often react quickly, passing judgment based on what they see or hear, without truly discerning the heart or knowing the full context of a situation. Maryam experienced this firsthand. Despite her innocence, many around her were quick to speak, to accuse, and to form opinions about her character. This is a reality that persists across generations. People will often doubt, misunderstand, and even condemn the innocent simply because human vision is partial and human perception is flawed. Human reaction is unpredictable and often unjust, yet divine justice remains constant, perfect, and infallible. Maryam's story illustrates that human reaction, while real and influential in worldly affairs, is ultimately limited in its power to harm or vindicate. Society may slander, criticize, or ostracize, but these human judgments cannot undo the protection that comes from God. The people around her judged her by appearances, yet divine justice acted in a way that no human reasoning could replicate. Her innocence was not dependent on convincing others or defending herself through human arguments. Instead, it was preserved and vindicated by God, whose perspective is complete and whose knowledge is absolute. This shows a critical spiritual principle. Human reaction is temporal, but divine justice is eternal. What people see, hear, or assume may fade, but the truth recognized by God endures. There is also an important lesson about patience and trust in this dynamic. When facing false accusations or misunderstanding, the natural human tendency is to react defensively, to try to persuade others, or even to retaliate. But Maryam's example teaches that the innocent who rely on divine justice do not need to manipulate circumstances or force vindication. God's justice moves on behalf of those who are righteous and faithful, often in ways that surpass human understanding. The timing and method of God's defense may not always align with human expectation, but they are always perfect. Human reaction may create noise, chaos, or pressure, but divine justice remains precise, measured, and effective. Another critical aspect is the enduring power of divine justice over reputation and legacy. Human reaction can tarnish a person's image temporarily, but the judgment of God establishes truth permanently. Maryam's vindication was not only immediate in its protective effect, but also enduring in demonstrating God's justice. Her story became a testimony for generations, showing that innocence combined with faith and sincerity will always be acknowledged and preserved by God. Even if human reaction seems overwhelming, false, or biased, divine justice ensures that the truth of a person's character and actions will ultimately prevail. Moreover, human reaction often reflects fear, ignorance, or misunderstanding. People judge because they do not see the full picture. They condemn because they do not understand the spiritual dynamics at work. Divine justice, on the other hand, does not rely on perception, opinion, or appearance. It sees the heart, knows the intentions, and evaluates the circumstances perfectly. Maryam's life is a clear example of how God's justice responds to the innocent when human understanding fails. It reminds us that we are accountable to God, not merely to human judgment, and that the truth of our actions and our character is ultimately measured by divine standards, not human reaction. Finally, this principle has profound application in daily life. We often face criticism, misrepresentation, or misunderstanding from others. Human reactions can be harsh and unfair, yet our security does not come from convincing people or correcting every misconception. Our security comes from trusting that God's justice will act on our behalf. Like Maryam, the righteous and innocent who rely on God's perfect justice will always be vindicated. They may not control human reactions, but they can rest in the assurance that God's justice is absolute, infallible, and unshakable. In conclusion, human reaction and divine justice operate on completely different levels. While human judgment is flawed, fleeting, and limited, divine justice is perfect, enduring, and unstoppable. Maryam's experience teaches us that innocence defended by God will not be overturned by human misunderstanding or false accusation. When human reaction is hostile or unfair, divine justice remains our unshakable shield, ensuring that truth, integrity, and righteousness prevail, not by human hands, but by the perfect hand of God. The principles we learn from Maryam's story, sincerity, faith, divine intervention, and divine justice, are not confined to extraordinary historical events. They are profoundly applicable to everyday life. Often, we think that the lessons of the righteous, of prophets, and chosen individuals are only for moments of extreme trial or miraculous circumstances. But the truth is that the same spiritual principles operate daily for anyone who chooses to walk in sincerity and faith. Our daily actions, our relationships, our work, and even our private moments are all arenas where these principles can be applied, ensuring that our character and integrity are preserved and that we are protected from harm, both seen and unseen. Every day, we are faced with situations that test our sincerity. It may be a colleague at work who misinterprets your intentions, a friend who spreads gossip, or a decision where the right choice is difficult and inconvenient. In these moments, sincerity acts as a shield, protecting the innocent from compromise, from being swayed by human pressure, and from the subtle erosions of character that often go unnoticed. Like Maryam, our protection is not guaranteed by people recognizing our truth, but by God observing the integrity of our hearts. Sincerity in daily life ensures that we remain aligned with divine principles, even when external circumstances seem unjust or challenging. Faith, too, is not only for moments of crisis, it is a daily necessity. Faith allows us to navigate life with confidence, knowing that God's protection, guidance, and provision are ever present. Just as Maryam's unwavering trust in God shielded her from societal judgment, our trust in God on a daily basis shields us from fear, doubt, and insecurity. Faith transforms the ordinary into a platform for divine protection. When we make decisions, face challenges, or confront uncertainty with trust in God, we activate a spiritual shield that protects not only our present circumstances, but also our future potential. Faith is the practical expression of reliance on God, ensuring that our hearts remain steadfast in the face of adversity, misunderstanding, or opposition. Divine intervention, though often dramatic in stories of prophets, is equally operational in our everyday lives. It may appear subtly in ways that are not immediately recognized, but it is constantly at work for those who maintain sincerity and faith. It may come as a timely word, a sudden solution, the right connection, or a circumstance shifting in our favor. Like Maryam, we do not need to manufacture our own defense or manipulate situations to protect ourselves. When our hearts are aligned with God's will, divine intervention is already at work, even if invisible to human eyes. Recognizing and trusting this principle allows us to live without fear, knowing that protection is not contingent on human validation, but on God's sovereign oversight. Human reaction will always be imperfect and sometimes hostile. People may misjudge, criticize, or accuse us unjustly. Yet, when we anchor our lives in faith and sincerity, divine justice ensures that our integrity and reputation are ultimately preserved. The lesson for daily living is clear. We cannot control everyone's response, but we can control our alignment with God by choosing sincerity, maintaining faith, and trusting God's justice. We navigate life in a way that protects us from the destructive power of false accusations, gossip, and misunderstanding. Finally, applying these principles daily cultivates spiritual resilience. Challenges, trials, and pressures are inevitable, but they become opportunities for growth and divine testimony. Each act of honesty, each decision made in faith, each moment of patience and trust becomes a practical application of the lessons exemplified by Maryam. Over time, these choices form a life that is consistently under divine protection, a life that demonstrates that innocence, sincerity, and faith are not theoretical ideals. They are actionable principles that shape character, protect the heart, and invite God's continuous favor. In essence, Maryam's story is not distant or abstract. It is a blueprint for everyday living. Sincerity, faith, divine intervention, and reliance on God's justice are not only for extraordinary events, they are for the mundane, the routine, and the ordinary moments that define the quality of our lives. By applying these principles daily, we ensure that innocence is protected, character is preserved, and God's favor is consistently manifested, just as it was in Maryam's life. Our daily choices, anchored in faith and sincerity, become a living testimony of divine protection, revealing that the principles which defended the innocent then are the very ones that safeguard the faithful now. As we reflect on Maryam's life, we see a timeless truth illuminated. Sincerity and faith are the shields of the innocent, and God himself rises to defend those whose hearts are pure. The trials she faced, the accusations she endured, and the vindication she received are not just historical events. They are spiritual principles that operate in our lives today. When sincerity governs our hearts and faith anchors our soul, we position ourselves under the protection of the Almighty. Human judgment may fail, lies may circulate, and pressures may come, but divine intervention and perfect justice always prevail for the innocent. Let this be your takeaway. Do not compromise your integrity to win favor. Do not be shaken by false accusations. And do not rely solely on human validation. Stand firm in faith, remain sincere in your intentions, and trust that God's defense will manifest. The same power that protected Maryam is available to protect you in every area of your life. Your innocence, your integrity, and your righteousness are never wasted when God is your defender. So, as you go from this place, carry this principle in your heart. Sincerity and faith are not just virtues. They are your spiritual armor. Guard your heart, trust in God, and watch as he vindicates what the world cannot understand. The innocent will never be abandoned. They will be elevated, defended, and glorified. Just like Maryam, your life can become a living testimony that God's protection is real, his justice is perfect, and his favor is unstoppable.